So, in a previous session, I mentioned to you that the start of every program is to actually write tests that represent the source code, okay? And that means we need a way to write that test, or we need a tool that is going to help us to write our source code. And in this video or in this course, we are going to use a test editor called Visual Studio Code, which you can find by googling Vscode and going to code.visualstudio.com. Now, for some people who have experience in some other technologies or languages, I am sure you might be aware of test editors like Sublime Test, Notepad, Notepad++. We have Atom, and for Python specifically, we have an IDE called PyCharm. What I want you to understand is that in this course, I want us to use VS Code or Visual Studio Code, and I highly encourage you to install Visual Studio Code even if you have any of these test editors, unless you know exactly what you are doing. And the reason is that I want your learning experience to be consistent with how I'm going to teach, so that you don't run into issues that I don't run into when you're watching the videos. But if you are okay with any other test editor out there, feel free to use that. Okay. All right, so once you are on the Visual Studio Code page, the site is also smart. It knows which version of the setup you have to download, because it has already detected that I'm visiting this site with a Macintosh computer. So it says download Mac Universal. So basically, you click on it, it downloads an installer file for you, which is a zip file. You unzip it, and you copy it into your applications directory on your Macintosh. I already have the Visual Studio Code installed, so I'm going to open it and show you some further setup that we need to do in there. All right, so I come to my desktop and I search for Visual Studio Code, and this is the Visual Studio Code test editor. It is a lightweight test editor that has been built to support writing code in several programming languages, except aside Python. So it is not a test editor specifically for Python. You can write code in several other programming languages using Visual Studio Code. And so it comes as a very minimalistic test editor, but it has extensions that you can install to enhance your experience for the particular programming language that you want to use it to write. And for Python, we need to install an extension called the Python extension for Visual Studio Code. Okay, so once you have installed VS Code and opened it, the next thing you want to do is you check the left hand side, and you can see that we have some icons here. Now when you hover over this icon, you can see that it shows extensions. You click on that, and you can search for a particular extension over here. So I search for Python, and it's going to filter and show you things or extensions that are related to programming in Python. Now over here, you can see a lot of Python extensions showing up, and it could be confusing at first. Now, I want you to be guided by looking at the number of downloads that the extension has. As at the time of making these videos, the one I want us to install is the first one, and it has about 35.2 million downloads. Now, another way you can know is looking at the creator of that extension. The extension I want you to install, and the one we'll be using for this course, is written by Microsoft. So you look for the Python extension that has been created by Microsoft, and you basically click on install. I already have it installed. That is why you are not seeing the install button. But if I go to an extension that I haven't installed already, then you can see that the install button is activated, and I can click on it. Once you click on it, you give it some time, you can see some progress happening. It installs the Python extension for you, and you are ready to write Python code using Visual Studio Code. Now, one more thing I want to tell you is that I mentioned earlier that these extensions are built to enhance your experience in terms of writing code for a particular language. And so for this Python extension from Microsoft, what it offers to us is linting, debugging, IntelliSense. It can also support Jupyter notebooks, and then code formatting, refactoring, and stuff like that. So basically, the extension just comes to enhance what Visual Studio Code as a text editor is able to let you do with respect to whatever programming language that you have chosen. So this is it for setting up VS Code and installing the needed extension so that we can start writing Python code. Thank you very much for watching this, and I will see you in the next.